Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. spent more than half a century in American politics, most of that at the federal level. 36 years as a U.S. Senator, 8 years as Vice President, and 4 years as President. While that experience gave him a great advantage influencing legislation passed while he was President, it also ultimately hurt his reputation as someone who was too ingrained in the established system, a system that became quite unpopular by the time he was President. A skilled negotiator and veteran, Biden's career was shaped by tragedy, persistence, and an ability to connect with working-class Americans, often by reminding them that he was one of them. Indeed, Joe Biden grew up in a working-class Roman Catholic family in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Born during World War II, Biden suffered from a debilitating stutter. At school, he was often teased and bullied for it. Determined to outgrow his stutter, he practiced reciting poetry out loud in front of a mirror. This early struggle gave him empathy for others with disabilities, and also an emotional depth that separated him from other politicians. After his father, Joe Sr., struggled to find steady income in Scranton, he moved the family to Claymont, Delaware, when Joe Jr. was 10. Joe wasn't a good student, but he was a standout athlete, playing both baseball and football at Archmere Academy. Despite being a poor student, Biden went on to attend the University of Delaware, majoring in both history and political science. During a spring break trip to the Bahamas in 1963, he met Nelia Hunter, a student at Syracuse University. The two soon fell in love. Based on this new relationship, Biden chose Syracuse to go to law school. The two got married while he was still a student there. Despite briefly getting in trouble for plagiarism, Biden completed his law degree and became a clerk at a Wilmington-based law firm. After briefly serving as a public defender and working in corporate law, Biden quickly realized that he didn't want to be a lawyer after all. In 1970, he registered as a Democrat for the first time and ran for the 4th District seat on the Newcastle County Council with a platform calling for more public housing, and he won. Less than a year later, at just 29 years old, Biden made the bold decision to run for the United States Senate. With a grassroots campaign run out of a tiny office and powered by family and friends, he pulled off a major upset, defeating a heavily favored Republican incumbent. However, just 2 weeks after his win, tragedy struck. His wife, Nelia, and his 3 young children got into a horrible car accident. The accident killed both Nelia and his 13-month-old daughter, Naomi, and badly injured his 2 sons, Beau and Hunter. This devastated Biden, who later admitted to contemplating suicide. He considered resigning before even taking office, but ultimately was convinced to stay, being sworn in from his son's hospital bedside. He married again in 1977 to Jill Jacobs. The two later had a daughter, Ashley. Thus began one of the longest Senate careers in American history. Although he'll likely be remembered in history as an old man, Biden brought a lot of youth and energy to the Senate in his early days. In those years, Biden leaned to the left politically on issues like consumer protection and environmental regulations, but leaned to the right politically on issues like abortion and same-sex marriage. He was notably the first U.S. senator to endorse Jimmy Carter for president. He also was known for his ability to reach across the aisle. Later in his career, he served as chairman of the Judiciary Committee, where he oversaw controversial events like the Anita Hill hearings during Clarence Thomas's Supreme Court confirmation. He helped write the now controversial 1994 crime bill. As chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, he became highly influential in international affairs after the end of the Cold War, and during the early stages of what became known as the War on Terrorism. In that position, he supported the expansion of NATO, more intervention in the Balkans, as well as Iraq to take out Saddam Hussein. However, he later regretted his vote for the Iraq War. Throughout his Senate years, Biden developed a reputation as one of the Senate's most active and vocal legislators. He gave long speeches, often speaking off the cuff. While this made insiders nervous, it made him more authentic to his constituents. Indeed, Biden maintained a strong connection to Delaware voters and easily won all his re-elections. This popularity raised his national profile to a point where many wanted to see him as president. Despite not running, a delegate voted for him to be the Democratic Party's nominee in 1984. He formally ran in 1988, but the aforementioned plagiarism scandal harmed his campaign. 20 years later, he ran for president yet again. Despite another failed campaign, he became friends with the eventual Democratic nominee, Barack Obama. Obama liked Biden so much that he asked him to be his running mate. After Obama won the presidency, Biden became the 47th vice president in American history. As vice president for 8 years, Biden served as a close advisor to Obama, helping steer the country through the Great Recession and overseeing the infrastructure spending from the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. He held a lead role in foreign policy, taking at least 47 trips to at least 50 countries as vice president. Obama came to depend on him as a seasoned negotiator, handling particularly sensitive diplomatic meetings. Back home, Biden's sometimes awkward, warm demeanor and working-class persona often balanced Obama's cool intellectualism. It was one of the most productive president-vice president relationships in American history, with media outlets even referring to it as a bromance. In 2015, Biden suffered more heartbreak after his eldest son, Beau, died of brain cancer. Beau was a rising political star following a similar path as his father, and his death profoundly affected Biden, leading him to sit out of the 2016 presidential race, despite many supporters encouraging him to run. Still, Biden remained in the public eye, publishing a memoir and developing the Penn-Biden Center for Diplomacy and Global Engagement. In 2019, Biden announced he would run for president a third time, running on a message of restoring the soul of America and healing the deep divisions of the Trump era. Initially counted out by political pundits, Biden bounced back with a crucial win in the South Carolina primary and backroom deals to secure the Democratic nomination. In a historic presidential election marked by a global pandemic, huge racial justice protests, and worsening political polarization, Biden defeated Donald Trump, becoming the oldest person ever elected to the presidency. He also made history by selecting Kamala Harris as his running mate, who would become the first woman, first African American, and first Asian American to serve as vice president. As president, Biden faced extreme challenges. First, he had the monumental task of guiding the country through the worst global medical crisis in more than 100 years, the COVID-19 pandemic. He oversaw the rollout of vaccines and the passage of the American Rescue Plan, which aimed to provide economic relief during the pandemic. By the end of 2021, most pandemic restrictions were lifted, and Americans responded by spending a lot of money. This, combined with supply constraints compounded by the Russian invasion of Ukraine, led to Americans facing inflation higher than had been seen in more than 40 years. Many Americans directly blamed Biden for the inflation. While he fulfilled a campaign promise by leading the withdrawal of American troops from Afghanistan, ending the country's longest war, the chaotic exit led to a humanitarian crisis. Additionally, the southern border with Mexico saw record levels of migrant crossings during Biden's time in office. Critics said his rollback of Trump-era policies led to a perceived lack of control at the border. Another campaign promise, forgiving student loan debt, got blocked by the Supreme Court. Additionally, when conflict broke out between Israel and Palestine in 2023, many Americans criticized Biden for ignoring Israeli atrocities, instead providing large amounts of financial aid and shipments of weapons to fuel ongoing war crimes, garnering him the nickname Genocide Joe. Still, despite having a slim minority in both houses of Congress, Biden was able to get major legislation passed. First, he signed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, a massive investment in roads, bridges, and broadband internet. Next, he signed the Inflation Reduction Act, the largest climate change law in American history. The Inflation Reduction Act incentivized clean energy and aimed to cut American greenhouse gas emissions by around 40% within a few years. The name was misleading, though. It wasn't designed specifically to fight inflation. However, it did allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices for the first time. Next, Biden signed the CHIPS and Science Act, which rebuilt critical semiconductor manufacturing in the country. He signed the PACT Act, which expanded health care and benefits to millions of veterans. And finally, he signed the Respect for Marriage Act, which affirmed and protected marriage equality for same-sex couples. In just 2 years of his presidency, Biden had accomplished much of his domestic and foreign goals, and yet he was determined to stay in office, despite becoming the first president to reach the age of 80. Many had concerns about his age and health, especially as his memory and ability to speak clearly had been declining. Biden downplayed those concerns, seeking re-election regardless, in a rematch with his 2020 opponent, Donald Trump. Trump had remained an extremely controversial figure in American politics. By 2024, he was facing 4 criminal indictments, becoming the first American president to become a convicted felon. In simpler times, Trump likely wouldn't have had an easy path to returning to the White House, but these were not simple times, and Biden had become quite unpopular. In his first major presidential debate with Trump, Biden struggled, trailing off at times, giving confusing answers. Indeed, his debate performance didn't convince many voters that he could handle the most difficult job in the world for 4 more years. After this, many Democrats called for Biden to drop out of the race, and to the shock of many Americans, he did precisely this. Just 107 days before the election, he announced that he was withdrawing his re-election bid and endorsing his vice president, Kamala Harris, for president. After Trump would go on to defeat her in that election, some criticized Biden for staying in the race as long as he did. Regardless, Biden was the first sitting American president to withdraw from seeking re-election since Lyndon Johnson in 1968. While he left office very unpopular, it's too early to judge his historical legacy. The bottom line is that most incumbents in recent years have been unpopular because Americans are generally frustrated with what's commonly referred to as the establishment, or the group of people benefiting from the existing power structure. By the time he left the presidency, it didn't matter that Biden had devoted considerable effort towards public service and helping the underserved. Americans now seemed to want someone outside the system, not someone who had been in it their whole lives. This desire was realized in the 2024 election, but we will return for that part of the story in a future tutorial.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel for more tutorials. Support me on Patreon so I can keep making content. And as always, feel free to email me, ProfessorDaveExplains@gmail.com.